I live in Maine, in a small town to the south of the state. Where I live, there is an old abandoned railway line that passes under a busy road. The new line takes an alternative route and, as such, the old tracks were left to just rust and decay. There has, for as long as I can remember at least, always been a horrific story associated with the old line. The story goes that, back in the 1910s, some repairs were being conducted in the tunnel that passed under the road. Apparently, whilst removing some equipment after the repair, one guy was still in the tunnel, clearing up some debris off the track. However, their train was coming and by the time his co-workers were calling to him in the tunnel, it was too late and well, you probably know what happened next. Ever since then, through the next 40 years before the track was closed in the 50s, train drivers had reported everything from seeing phantom people on the tracks, but not hitting them, disembodied groans and screams, and even reported seeing a creepy lantern light floating in the distance on its own. The stories carried on over the decades, the derelict look of the tracks adding to the disturbing stories and tales. The same things would be reported but under more intense circumstances, one-on-one encounters with ghostly apparitions of a rail worker and such. I never believed the stories. It was just a town legend as far as I was concerned, and I never was one for ghosts and stuff. However, I had one encounter a while back that seemingly changed all that. I regularly walked my dog through the old tunnel and round back the other side. My dog had arthritis and struggled to walk on uneven terrain. The compact stones and planks were the easiest thing for my dog to exercise on in my local area. I had passed through the tunnel hundreds of times throughout the years, at every time of the day imaginable, and I had never once felt uneasy or seen something unexplainable. That is, at least, until this particular event. It was early one morning, about 5 AM, and it was lightish outside, but a thick blanket of fog coated the floor, disrupting vision ahead. We walked up the old broken tracks through the fog. Weeds and other greenery had grown to reclaim the tracks, and the thick fog made it more difficult than usual to spot our footfalls. We entered the tunnel as we usually did, and I shone my flashlight deep into its belly. It was quite a long tunnel. After the track closed, the road above was widened to accommodate the heavier traffic flow. I'd say it was 1,000 feet long easy and curved ever so slightly to the right. As we were walking down, I heard what sounded like someone throwing or kicking stones down the track. That almost satisfying click. I thought someone else was walking down the tracks, which itself was weird as I very, very rarely encountered other people on my walks, especially when out this early in the morning. My plan was to just continue on my way and nod politely or ignore the person walking through. This was hindered by my dog, Knox. He was whimpering and had his tail down between his legs. I had walked ahead and he didn't follow. I turned to see his little grey head poking above the fog. "What's up, bud?" I remember asking. He just kept whimpering and wouldn't budge. I had to put his lead around him so I could give him a light tug here and there to get him moving. He reluctantly begins to follow me, whining as we progress, the stone clicks still coming from in the distance. As we get about halfway through, I think it odd that I haven't seen or heard anything else of this person I assumed I was sharing the tunnel with. I was rationalising that the clicks may be stones crumbling from above due to the cars passing overhead, but whenever that had happened in the past, it was dust-like rather than big stones that fell. I wasn't scared, but was slightly confused. What was it? I didn't have much time to mull things over in my mind because Knox began barking viciously at something in the distance, hackles raised. I looked ahead to see a deep orange glow from within the fog. It looked like a lantern. I was telling Knox to calm down, trying to stroke his back, saliva dripping from his sharp teeth. All of a sudden, a high-pitched ringing coursed through the tunnel. and I clasped my hand to my ears and Knox was in visible distress. It got louder and louder, higher and higher. I collapsed to my knees, pushing my fingers deep into my ears. It then faded out. I was scared at first to remove my fingers and did so cautiously. My hearing was tinny and I felt a little dizzy. I looked up and the orange light had disappeared. I turned immediately to see if Knox was okay, and my skin was coated in goosebumps as his hackles were once again raised and he was growling, looking at something right over my shoulder. I tensed up, feeling an unnaturally cold breeze on my back, and that's when it happened. A deep, croaky, mischievous male voice shouted, "Boo!" at the top of its voice, right down my ear, the sound echoing through the chasm of the tunnel. I turned quickly and saw no one in the tunnel behind me, and I took Knox up in my arms and we ran back out of the tunnel the way we had came. A manic laugh emanated by the invisible man followed behind. We got out the other side and I was panting, my heart thundering heavily against my ribcage. I'm reluctant to say it was paranormal. There could have been a hobo in there who was wiggy and didn't want me to disturb his abode. I couldn't tell in the fog. I have to admit that there was an uneasy feeling to the whole thing, and I usually try to avoid the tunnel when I can, these days.
Okay, so this is something that happened to me just last week. We have this road just outside of our town where back in the late 1980s a drunk girl on her way home from her high school prom was killed whilst drunk driving. It was raining heavily that night and she lost control of her car and collided with a tree, head on, killing her instantly. Now this is a 100% true story and was featured in many news articles at the time. Since then, an urban legend has been circulating about people driving down that stretch of road whilst in the rain and coming across a distressed young looking girl in an ornate dress by the side of a wrecked car. When the drivers pull over, she'll ask them if they'd be able to drive her home, but whenever the driver looks away, looks down, or averts their gaze in any way, then look back, the whole haunting scene is gone, and they're just pulled over at the side of the road. Classic urban legend stuff really, but I don't think anyone thought or believed this was real. Well, let me tell you about last week. I work in the next town over from where I live. I'm not going to tell you the name of it, since family of the girl from the urban legend still live here and I want to be respectful towards them. Working in another town, I use the road in question often and have been doing so for the last 2 or so years, without incident, other than that one time I got a flat tyre. I was used to this road in pretty much every way possible. In snow, rain, sleet, you name it. I could still comfortably drive this road and I knew each and every bend well. Imagine my shock then, one night when it's pouring down with rain. I'm coming up to the area where the prom girl crashed, although I didn't know this was the exact location until afterwards. And I see this young girl stood by the side of the road in a fancy red dress and an old style car. I'm not really sure of the make or model, I have literally no interest in cars, but it's absolutely trashed against a tree. I pull over immediately. Chills run down my spine and ice courses its way through my entire body. I knew the legend, but I couldn't just let a potentially stranded young girl stay out in the rain all night. I sat in my car, the engine dead. Rain battered off the metallic exterior and my windows were steamy as lone raindrops raced across the pane. I wound my window down and checked my wing mirror. This girl was still there. I could hear her weeping from where I had parked. She didn't move or look up. It was as if she didn't notice me. I let my head out the window. "Excuse me, are you okay?" She just kept weeping and didn't look up. The hairs raised all over my body as I realized I hadn't seen her face once. I wasn't getting out my car yet. Who knows what she could do to me? I'm a small female, just under 5 foot, and this chick was easily 5'7". I started my car and reversed until my driver's side window was parallel to the crying figure. "Hello," I said, Still no response. I finally reached out my hand to tap her arm. It was like plunging my hand into a bucket of icy water. I recoiled and gasped, but the woman finally looked up. Now you must think I'm crazy, but she spoke to me and we had a coherent conversation. I can't remember it word for word, but she seemed rushed and panicked, and she said she was hurt. I couldn't see too well because of how dark it was, and I told her to get in. She slowly walked over to my driver's side window. My hand clenched the lever to wind up, the legends whirring in my head. As she came into the light that emanated from inside my car, she looked at me dead in the face, and her eyes, they were totally black. Tar, like pits of slick, shiny oil, no pupils. She seemed to relish in my discomfort and suddenly began laughing hysterically. I tried to push the old urban legend out of my mind. Maybe this woman had horrifically injured her eyes. I needed to stop being controlled by these stories. It was just a coincidence, and I needed to help this woman. Having an old car, I had to lean over and pull up the archaic mechanical lock manually. Once I'd slung back in my seat, I looked out the window and you guessed it, she had gone, along with the entirety of the wrecked car. I didn't even think to look for the missing woman. At this point, I knew exactly what I had seen, what I had been a part of. I drove home, shaking vigorously. All the colour had gone from my face and I was holding back puke. I got home and barely breathed a word of this for the first few days. I was extremely uncomfortable commuting to and from work, constantly on edge, especially in that area. I ended up researching the poor girl who died there. Admittedly, I cannot say for sure the stranded woman was her, but the spot where she crashed just so happened to be the spot where I saw this phantom hitchhiker. And if that wasn't crazy enough, the car she drove looked really similar to the trash one I saw that night. I know how crazy this all sounds. Urban legends aren't supposed to be real, I get that. But this did actually happen to me and I just needed to share it so I know that I'm not going crazy. I still have to drive on that same stretch of road. I know it's only been a week, but the intensity of it all still hasn't subsided. I honestly just hope that one day that poor girl can get the peace she deserves.
I have submitted a story here before regarding a paranormal experience I had had in the past. I don't want to tell you which story this was, purely for the reason that that story and this one exist as their own experiences. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to tell you this before I start, as I believe the events from this story may have a connection with the events of that story and other unexplained happenings I have experienced throughout my life. I know some parts of this will come across as crazy, but at the end of the day, I can only tell you what I believe happened to me. So, without further ado, here goes. We've all heard the legend of Bloody Mary. For those of you who have been hiding under a rock since before I was born, Bloody Mary is a legend/game that states if you stand in front of a mirror, usually in a dark room, and mutter the words Bloody Mary 3 times, a spirit will be conjured. Most times, the legend states it will attack you, though variants of the tale suggest it foretells the future. Many of you have probably done the Bloody Mary game, and I bet your bottom dollar that nothing happened. Otherwise, my experience would be common knowledge and probably not at all scary. Now, I don't know if I'm just unlucky, or if my house was already haunted, but it went wrong for me. Allow me to elaborate. Back when I was 15, my parents were out of town, visiting my dad's sister who had just given birth to my niece. Being a self-centered teen, I opted not to go and use the excuse of a free house to have 5 of my best friends round for a sleepover. It was super cringy. We ordered takeaway and discussed the most recent gossip at the school, talking about who liked who and who was doing what. The conversation turned to a guy who was in our math class, who had apparently been using a Ouija board to speak to his grandma. And after this, there was no escaping the talk of ghosts, spirits, and the unnatural. At this time in my life, I was young and had only had a handful of experiences. none of which I was comfortable or ready to talk about. One of my friends began talking about doing a Ouija. I instantly vetoed the idea. Like I say, I'd already had a few iffy experiences and I didn't want to provoke what I had little understanding of in my own home. My friends called me out on this, saying I was no fun, but I held my ground. My friends were being assholes, but at the end of the day, we were teenagers and I don't hold anything against them for this. It went quiet and a cloud hung over the room. Another friend piped up saying she was in the mood for something scary and asked if we could at least do Bloody Mary, meet in the middle. After all, it is fake, or so she said. I was again reluctant, but peer pressure crushed me and against my better judgment, I agreed. None of us could decide who would be the one to go in, so we drew straws and lo and behold, I drew the fucking short one. Just my bloody luck. I go into the bathroom, the light already off, and close and lock the door behind me. I can hear my friends jostling to put their ears against the door, talking in hushed whispers. I stand in front of the mirror, unable to see anything, my heart rate elevated, my breath short, and my palms sweaty. I stare into the abyss before recounting the phrase, Bloody Mary, thrice, whilst looking directly into the mirror. Nothing happened at first, and then I noticed how quiet it was. Deathly. I turned away from the mirror and glanced at the door. I could not hear my friends. I could no longer hear the cars driving on the road outside the window. I clutched the edge of the sink with both hands and tried to stay calm. Now, I know it sounds weird, but I don't know if it was an intense oppressive feeling or the area actually being visually darker, but my sight was drawn to the corner of the bathroom behind me. It was a crushing feeling, almost suffocating, and I leant closer to the mirror to get a better look. That's when I heard it cut through the air like it was cake. A scream, more like a squeal. It sounded like my friend Jackie, but she sounded far away and distant. And I turned and screamed, "Jackie!" banging on the bathroom door. Then, in the corner, I saw a figure, his face hidden behind a veil, his dark, shadowy form lunging from the darkness. In shock, I toppled backwards, heard the mirror smash. Don't know if I fell into it or not, and then I collapsed. I came round I don't know how long after to my friends frantically knocking on the door. The bathroom light was now on. The switch was outside of the bathroom, not inside, so I assume one of my friends turned it on, and I stood up and looked at the shattered mirror. Everything was back to normal. No uneasy feeling of sheer terror, no indescribable black mass lurking in the corner, no silence. I opened the door to the relief of my friends who were angry at me, telling me my joke wasn't funny. I told them I had genuinely passed out and they seemed super scared. I lied and told them it was probably from lack of sleep or something and that nothing odd happened, and that I must have smashed the mirror when I fell. They told me they were about to call an ambulance and I had been in there for over an hour. Surely I wasn't out that long. But then they told me they heard the mirror smash after 45 minutes or so. I had lost track of time. I had been conscious and aware for 3/4 of an hour, and it felt like minutes. And I walked past them to go back downstairs and Jackie squealed, mirroring the squeal I had heard when alone in the bathroom. She said my name in shock. "Look in the mirror, quick!" I rushed back to the bathroom, and one of my other friends, with tears running down her cheeks, picked up a shard of glass off the floor and held it up so I could see my back. 3 long, jagged scratches had cut through my t-shirt and had left my back a torn and bloodied mess. I began crying hysterically and we immediately went to ER. The medics assumed I'd cut it on the broken glass and gave me stitches. We got back to my place at about 3:30 AM and sat in stunned silence. They knew what had happened, but dare not say. I knew what had happened, but dare not say either. I was attacked by an entity that night. Although graphic, It was a one-off and not as bad as my previously shared experience, which was dragged out over time and was both physically and mentally draining. However, in recent months, it has played on my mind as to whether this incident let something malevolent into my life, something I still to this day haven't been able to shake. Hey guys, Brothers Jackson here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to give a huge shout out to AmysCrypt for narrating the second story. Really would appreciate it if you went and checked her channel out. She's only just started uploading, she's not got that many subs, so go and show her some support. She doesn't tend to really do like horror narrations. I don't know if she's going to start, but she does some really cool videos of her travelling all over the world, basically, in Australia, in America, everything like that. Scoping out haunted locations for investigations, gives you a bit of history. Really good content, so I recommend you go and check her out. And I want to thank her for being part of this video. Also, tune in next week for another video. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. I will decide this week. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more amazing content, and go follow me on Instagram because I post on there a lot, so go follow me on there. Thanks so much for your support, guys. I really appreciate it. Peace out.